6. And as you maybe can tell by looking at the problem, we're going to get to practice factoring some more. So you may or may not have gotten to factoring on your pie chart, but if not, we get more practice. So we're going to simplify some fractions. In order to simplify our fractions, we have to have them in factored form so that we can reduce out our common factors. So if I look at the top part of this first one, first thing I want to look for, is there a greatest common factor, something I can divide out of all the terms so that my numbers aren't so big. In this case, I can divide both of these by 4. So I'm going to take the 4 out first to reduce it down a little bit so that my other factoring is a little easier. If I divide 4 out of that first term, it's going to leave me just the u squared. If I divide 100 by 4, it's going to leave me 25. Then I'm going to look at what's in the parentheses and say, can I factor that farther? Hopefully you recognize that's the difference of perfect squares, and yes, I can factor that using my conjugates. And so I'm going to have 2 sets of parentheses, factors of u squared, u and u. Since this is a negative, we know we're going to have 1 plus and 1 minus, and then factors of 25, 5 and 5, right? So I've got the top as factored as much as I possibly can. I'm going to look at the bottom. On the bottom, there's not a greatest common factor that I can divide out of all 3 of my terms. And so I'm just going to go to the foiling thing. So I'm going to jump way over here to this part, since I don't have a greatest common factor, and I'm going to factor that. Factors of u squared, u and u. The end is a positive. That means both signs are going to be the same as the middle, a negative and a negative. And then since this is one with a leading coefficient of 1, the factors of 15 that add up to 8. 5 and 3, right? So that if I did negative 3u plus negative 5u, I got that negative 8u in the middle, right? The outside plus the inside adds up to the middle. Now what should happen is you should at least have one pair of common factors. Here it's the u minus 5. I'm going to be able to cancel those out of there. So on the top I have 4 times u plus 5. On the bottom I just have the u minus 3. Don't really need the parentheses on the bottom since it's not multiplied by anything. So we'll get lots of practice in factoring and factoring some more. So, number 2. If I look at that one, if I look at the top, not a greatest common factor, especially I can tell because there's a u squared and there's not a number in front of my u squared. So I'm going to go to that last step, so I'm going to jump way to the end here. And so we want to factor out u squared plus 2u minus 24. So the factors of u squared. U and u, right? Then I want to figure out my signs. The end sign is a negative, so I know my signs are positive and negative, one of each. Positive times a negative gives me a negative. I want the factors of 24 that when I do the outside plus the inside, it's going to add up to a positive 2. So think about all your factors of 24 and how you could plug them in so that if one's a plus and one's a minus, they add up to positive 2.
And 12. Oh.
Now if I do 2 and 12, they're going to be too far apart, right?
Okay.
Does that give me 10?
Oh.
It's another pair of factors for 24.
12.
We already did 2 and 12. We said that was too far
12
apart.
12, no?
Well, 12 and 12 would be 24. Factors. What times what is 24?
Okay,
what times what is 24?
6 and 4.
6 and 4. So if I want to get a positive 2, that means the bigger number has to be by the plus sign, right? 6 minus, whoops, it doesn't like that there. 6 minus 4 is 2, right? Negative 4u plus
Okay.
6u is the 2u in the middle. Exactly. Now, if we look at the bottom, that one does have a greatest common factor. I can divide all of those by
I'd say 4.
I'd say 4 too, yep. All of those are divisible by 4.
I've just been wrong.
So I'm going to divide them all by 4 first. So 4u squared, if I take the 4 out of there, I just get a u squared. Negative 4, if I take the 4 out of there, I get a negative u. And then negative 48 divided by 4 would give me negative 12. I'm then going to factor that part a second time. That 4 is still in front, and then my 2 sets of parentheses because I'm going to FOIL out what's left in the parentheses. So, factors of u squared. U and u. Looking at my signs. Again, the end is negative, which means I know what for my signs?
A positive and a negative.
Positive and a negative. And now I want the factors of 12 that when I plug them in, I get a minus 1u in the middle, right? A minus u is a minus 1u.
So you just want a minus u?
Yep, you just want a minus u. But you know that you have a plus and a minus, so you're going to subtract your values and end up with a minus 1. So what pair of factors of 12 would only be 1 apart?
3 and 4.
3 and 4. Since I want to have a minus, the bigger number has to be by the minus.
Okay.
So I'm going to have a 4 here and a 3 here. Negative 4u plus 3u. Negative 4 plus 3 is negative 1. Now we can see, hey, we got a common factor of u minus 4. We're going to cross those off of there. So on the top, we have u plus 6. On the bottom, 4 times u plus 3. Hope you guys are writing smaller than I am. I have these in Word now. Next time I can add more space, so when I write really big, I'll have more room. All right, I'm going to erase this here, and I'm going to have you go ahead and see if you can get started on number 3 there. Look to see if you have a greatest common factor first. And if you do, factor that out. So on the top part of that fraction, do you have a greatest common factor? You can factor out all 3 of those terms?
4.
4. And if I divide 4 out of there, what am I left with?
12u. Oh, u2.
U squared
U squared.
minus
3.
3u minus
4.
4, exactly. Then we have to factor again. So, factoring the u squared minus 3u minus 4. Factors of u squared.
U
U and u. My signs.
plus and negative.
Plus and a negative, because again we got a negative on the end. And factors of 4 that give us a minus 3 in the middle.
3 and 4.
Factors of 4.
Factors of 4.
What times what is 4?
Oh, 2.
Now if I do 2 and 2, what am I going to get in the middle? I'm going to get nothing, right? Because plus 2 and minus 2 is 0. What's the other way to get 4?
1.
1 and 4. Which one has to be by the minus sign?
4.
The 4, because it's bigger, and we want a minus 3. So negative 4 plus 1 is the minus 3 in the middle, right?
Yep.
All right. Bottom one doesn't have the greatest common factor. Go ahead and try to factor that one out. So we know u squared is u and u. The next thing you want to think about is what is your signs going to be? The end is positive, so both signs are the same as the middle. They're both going to be negative, right? A negative times a negative gives you that positive on the end, but will add up to the negative in the middle. So now we're thinking about the factors of 12, that when I plug them in, I'm going to get 7. What times what is 12? 3 and 4. When I put a 3 and a 4 in there, I'm going to have negative 4u plus negative 3u, which adds up to negative 7u. And we knew one of them had to match up. In this case, it's the u minus 4 that we can cancel out of there. And so our answer, 4 times u plus 1 over u minus 3.